Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Maria Stutzmany Marquez, and I serve as a Director of Admissions for the graduate programs here at Mendoza College of Business at the University of Notre Dame. And it is a great pleasure to be seated with our MBA Academic Director, Joe Sweeney, who really has a tremendous impact on the program in leadership and really in innovation and creating the experience that really helps students to maximize their time here at the University of Notre Dame. So we're very excited to share with you more insights and provide you with some updates to what's been happening on the MBA front. So without further ado, Joe, thank you again for being here. I'd love to hear, and I know our audience would love to hear more about, what led you to this leadership role, and really what is your connection to the university and Mendoza College of Business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I've been a part of the Notre Dame community for quite a long time. I was actually an undergraduate student here many moons ago, and I studied actually political science and Arabic. I worked for about 4 years and then returned to Notre Dame to do my MBA. So I'm actually a graduate of the program, which has been a really incredible experience for me and has had a really great impact on my career and my life. Following the MBA program, I worked in brand management roles, specifically within the wine industry. I did that for a number of years and then returned to the university a number of years ago, and have worked in a couple different roles here at Mendoza in that time. When I first came back, I actually worked in recruiting and admissions as well. And one of the things that was really impactful for me going through that experience was really seeing the progression of the student through the entire path, being able to have that initial conversation with someone who is still considering, should I even get an MBA, and going from that first conversation all the way to seeing them graduate and then start their business careers is something that was really, really impactful for me and really inspiring to see in their journeys. Through my time here, I've been very fortunate to have a number of different experiences. One of the courses that I took when I was a student in the MBA program was Business on the Front Lines, which is one of our signature experiences here in the MBA program. And then when I came back to start working at the university, I started working again with the class in an advisory capacity. And through the growth of that program, was able to make the transition into our faculty and actually started teaching Business on the Front Lines a couple of years ago. So with that move, it kind of created a number of different opportunities. And then I was fortunate to be asked to step into the role as academic director at the MBA program last year. So in my current role, I wear a couple different hats. So I still teach in the program. So I still teach under the umbrella of the Meyer Business on the Front Lines program for our MBA students. And then I also serve as kind of the overarching leader for the program in terms of innovation, strategy, and taking a look at the broader landscape of the program and kind of how we fit into business education and, what's the right way for Notre Dame to do business education in today's world.
Yeah, wow. So coming along with that trajectory, you have an innate understanding of the University of Notre Dame and its mission and values, of Mendoza College of Business, and then also of some of the very unique experiences that are a part of the promises that we make to students in terms of experiential learning. So we'll definitely get into that through our time here. You mentioned at the end there this innovation and strategy, and we know that graduate management education has a big responsibility in helping to shape the way industries and across all sectors are really moving into this modern era when it comes to things like ESG or social impact, and also really continuing to be competitive in the marketplace, right? So we want to set up students for success as they build out their careers. So how have you reimagined the curriculum, and what are some things that are to be expected from the program?
Yeah, so there's a number of different elements that go along with that. One of the things that we've been working on a lot lately is creating the opportunity for students to have a little bit more customization to their curricular experience as they go through the program. So, everybody looks at MBA as an investment in yourself, which it is, and it's a great way to set forward your career, but everybody's career path is going to be a little bit different. So we find that the majority of our students end up going into career fields related related to consulting, finance, technology, or marketing. But within that, students go into a number of different industries to use those skills and those roles. And people have a number of different ways to be able to tell their story in those various capacities. So one of the things that we're doing right now is actually launching a series of minors that will help to complement our major offerings and really help the students to engage in our core curriculum a little bit differently in a way that's really customized and tailored to their needs, in a way that really helps them to tell their story into the marketplace in the most impactful way. Along with that, we're taking a look at kind of key areas for investment, particularly around experiential learning. So we have different experiential learning offerings that really kind of feed into each of those four major areas, and really thinking about different ways to create more opportunities for students to get hands-on with companies, to get away from campus and have opportunities to learn and explore in the real world, to work on problems that don't have answers. And for me, that's one of the things that's always kind of most exciting, is how do you take your core business skill set and then really apply it in a way that's going to have impact in the real world.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think the students really appreciate that summary of the work that's being done. I know it takes a lot of effort and a lot of stakeholders to really come together to build out something new, and something that's really going to help from a student-centered perspective as they go out into the world. One of the terms that you use that I found that I want to just repeat often is this idea of industry captains with a focus on social impact. Can you describe that a little bit more and how that plays into these innovations that have come through, but then also to the ethos and the spirit of the community here?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I think about what we really want to be able to put into the marketplace, it really is these, socially minded captains of industry. So if you think about the way that our students are going to have impact in the business world, first and foremost, you have to be in the right room to be able to have that conversation, right? So that's where the captains of industry comes from. If you're in the boardroom at major companies, major corporations, you have the ability to impact the trajectory of those organizations, to impact how those organizations, have impact on their employees, on their customers, on the world around them in a really important way. And then I think as we think about it, there's a great way to do business, that can be a positive influence in a lot of these areas. And so having students with the right mindset, with the right ethos, so that when they're in those boardrooms and they're making those decisions, they can bring those considerations to bear in the real world. At its core, business is a tool. It's not fundamentally good or bad in itself. It's a tool, and so how we use it is really important. And so a core part of the way that we approach business is being able to use it as a positive force in the world to have, an impact that benefits others, that benefits the communities that we work and live and play in, and really has a broader positive impact in the business landscape.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm sorry for misparaphrasing.
No,
earlier.
All right.
Socially minded captains of industry. Got it. So, you speak about this leadership, right? That is really an evolved leadership. I think, one of the things that we read about now is that for leaders now and moving forward, they need to have a sense of empathy and groundedness and the ability to perspective take, as well as having some of those other skills that are inherent and necessary to run a large organization or a unit or, different systems within different organizations. So how does Mendoza and Notre Dame teach leadership? How do they become captains of industry?
Yeah, so it comes through in a couple of different ways. So one of the very first things that we do with our students when they arrive here is a program called Leadership Launch. So this is actually part of our orientation program before classes even start. And so it's a multi-day engagement that really centers around a lot of these core questions of what should a leader look like. It also looks a lot introspectively in terms of understanding yourself, understanding your classmates, really being able to think critically about what are my strengths, what are the areas that maybe I need to address and continue to develop over my 2 years in the program or my 1 year in the program. And then there are kind of multiple touch points, particularly throughout your core coursework, that then continue to reinforce this and, some of the core ideas that are taught in that initial leadership launch program. One of the other things that the program has is a lot of active hands-on leadership opportunities. Mm-hmm. We have a really incredible student leadership in the program right now through a couple of different avenues. We have kind of a broader, call it almost a student government that works closely with me and a lot of my colleagues in terms of some of the core operations of the program. And then we have a really robust club system as well. Our clubs break into a couple of different groups. We have some that are a little bit more career aligned. We have some that are a little bit more aligned to interest or affinity. But the student leadership creates some really great opportunities for students to engage, to take ownership of different programs, different initiatives. Some of these organizations also control a fairly significant spend as well, so you get budgetary management, things like that. Those are all things that really kind of build into the types of roles and the types of leadership that you can have in your future careers as well.
Yeah, I've been so just speaking about those two parts when you're talking about the leadership and the transformation that can happen at that level early on, really setting the tone for how people involve and engage throughout the program. But then also, I've been privy to a couple of these meetings with the student government and talk about an engaged group, right? Mm. Just incredibly engaged. And so it leads me to kind of think about the diversity of interests and the ways in which people connect on campus to the mission and to what they hope their experience will be, not only for themselves, but for others. And we know that, our dean speaks to, how we contribute, how we cooperate, then will inform how we compete to be mm-hmm. the very best. And so can you share a little bit more about our community? I think it's unique, and everybody, will have its own community feel. Mm-hmm. Can you describe a couple of examples that you've experienced that really highlight the types of students and the type of community that we have here in the MBA program?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this, again, is one of the core reasons why I keep coming back to Notre Dame, is because it really is a very close-knit community. As we think about the MBA program in particular, we're intentionally small, and a really key part of that is being able to really get to know your classmates on a personal level. And I think the type of student that selects a program like Notre Dame is also generally the type of student that is interested in being part of something that's larger than themselves. And so that creates a really strong community for the students, for the program. It also really feeds into our alumni network, which is incredibly powerful, very responsive, because through many, many years, students have had that connection, and so they maintain that tie back to the program, back to the university, back to the students that are here going through it today as well. I think for me, there's a couple things that really kind of embody this as students go through the experience. One of the things that always jumps out to me is, going through interview prep and career prep. A lot of that is done in partnership with either the club organizations or just your peers. So people are genuinely interested in seeing each other succeed. So they'll help each other prepare for interviews at the same company, and make sure that that everyone is performing to the best of their abilities, as opposed to, trying to compete for what they see as a limited number of positions, something like that. I think the other way that it really shows itself from kind of the longer term perspective is you see the way that our alumni engage with us. That can be as simple as, showing up for a networking event in a place like Seattle or San Francisco or New York City, where we have really great alumni communities. It can be something like coming back to serve in an advisory capacity for courses like Business on the Front Lines or our Applied Investment Management course. So there's a lot of ways that the alumni stay very engaged from that standpoint. One of the things that I've also seen just personally in my life too is, you send a classmate a message after not talking to them for 5 years or 10 years, and you get a response back almost immediately. I did a trip to China a couple of years ago, and I had a couple of my classmates who had moved back to Beijing after we had completed the program, and sent them a note and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in town for a couple of days. It would be great to see you." And they responded back almost immediately immediately and said, yes, we'd love to take you to dinner and, show you around our city and everything. And it was a really fun experience to get to reconnect after a number of years and, just kind of reinforce and strengthen those bonds.
Those are some incredible stories. And, as a member of the community, I see this tangentially from stories that I hear from students or when they're sharing more about their outcomes when it comes to career advancement or their internship. And so you brought up a couple of points that I want to make sure that we get to. One is around career development and kind of what that looks like for students and what their trajectory, what the potential of their trajectory. And then the second is I really want to circle back to this idea of business on the front lines and experiential learning, because you described a couple of courses that I think are really important to who we are in building that community of advancement through experiential learning as well. But let's talk about the career development. Tell me a little, what does that arc of experience look like for students?
Yeah, so the career process really starts even a little bit before you get onto campus, and that's true of most MBA programs at this point as well, right? So one of the things that I always encourage prospective students to really think about is, where do you want something like this to take you? As we go through the program, there are a number of kind of very specific touch points. One of the things that you do in the very first module of the program is go through a career leadership course. The career leadership course has a couple of different tracks. So depending on what your career interest looks like, there's some kind of custom and tailored information for each of the respective groups, because different companies recruit in different ways. The folks going into investment banking have a little bit of a different timeline than the folks going into consulting, than the folks going into technology or into consumer products. And so being able to tailor those curricula a little bit helps to prepare the students in a little bit more of a meaningful way. We touched on the clubs a little bit earlier. Clubs play a great role in terms of the career process as well. They also work very closely with our career development team. So we have a set of very engaged coaches that will work one-on-one with students to help tailor, target company lists, to help work on your resume, your interviewing skills. When I went through the program, I ended up doing a lot of mock interviews with my coach because that was something that I wasn't comfortable doing at the time. And so it really is a skill, and once you develop it, then you can continue to employ it throughout your career. But having those personal interactions, those personal touch points with your coach, with your fellow students, are really, really crucial in terms of advancing along your career journey. One of the other elements that comes into play, of course, is the alumni network as well. And so as part of both the career leadership course and our broader career development programming, we'll have a number of times where we'll have alumni from various industries, various companies specifically, come back and engage with students, tell them a little bit more about kind of the companies, how they work, their interview processes, of course, tips and tricks and all of that. And then that's also kind of a critical part of the process as well, is doing some of your own networking as well and reaching out into the alumni network, having some of these conversations a little bit more directly of, okay, I generally understand what it's like to be a consultant. What is it like to be a consultant at Deloitte, or what is it like to be a consultant at McKinsey? How are those different? So you can really kind of get a little bit of a better sense of what it's really like from a day-to-day standpoint and how that's going to be impactful for you.
Yeah, it's impressive because I'm hearing a couple of themes come up throughout the conversation. And when you answered that question, I'm hearing we're doubling down on leadership in some way, right? That career coaches and that whole process is incredibly tailored to the individual. There's some initiative that students have to take, but ultimately it is kind of this global support that's happening for individuals. That's really wonderful, and it's experiential in design. So let's talk about business on the front lines.
Yeah.
And that being one of our signature programs here that I think is really a look into how we engage globally, domestic, through different organizations, different sectors. How would you say this adds to the dimension of our MBA students, and if they choose to participate, how does one get involved? What do some of them look like? What are some of the outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another one of those big areas of investment for us over the last couple of years. So it's really grown. When I was a student, there was one course, and it was business on the front lines, and that was that. So now it's a broader program. So we are the Meyer Business on the Front Lines program, thanks to the benefaction of the Meyer family and a couple others as well. And we've been able to grow and expand our course offerings. So we now have 4 different courses that fall under the umbrella of the Meyer Business on the Front Lines program. These are all built specifically for our MBA students, and they're all experiential service learning opportunities. So they have kind of a unique couple of characteristics that go along with it. The lens that we think about in terms of the type of projects that we engage in are all looking to address some of the biggest challenges in the world. Things like post-conflict rehabilitation, deep poverty, prejudice, isolation, illicit economies. So really addressing some of the biggest questions that are impacting our world today, and then thinking about how can the skills of business change some of the base conditions. So as we think about the impact of our student teams and the course and the program as a whole, we really think about it on the kind of a spectrum of job creation to fundamentally changing the conditions for economic growth. So we do this in a couple of different contexts. We do this internationally. We work with partners around the world in a lot of different areas. For me personally, my project as a student was in Egypt in the wake of the Arab Spring, and so looking at how our partner could impact the high rates of unemployment in the agriculture sector. I've worked with teams in Colombia and Tunisia and Ghana, looking at ways to combat illicit economies such as growing of coca in Colombia, looking at what happens when you shut down a large gold mining operation that's the primary employer in a region. What happens after? So there's a lot of different types of projects that we engage in. A critical part of all of our courses is having local action partners that we work with. So as we look at different areas, whether it's internationally in a place like Colombia or domestically here in the U.S. in a place like South Chicago or in Appalachia or South Central LA, we think about, can we partner with a local organization that can take a set of recommendations and then implement to have impact in their communities? So that partnership model is a really, really core piece as well. At its core, these are really consulting engagements. We're coming in with a fresh set of eyes. We're using our business skills to make a set of recommendations, but we do it in such a way that you really get to meet and understand and know a very different community. You get to understand the community that our partners are serving in a very meaningful way, and being able to understand their conditions and their challenges, and more importantly, their hopes and dreams, is something that really helps to drive to powerful solutions. We've been very fortunate over the last several years to have kind of a strategic level impact on a number of our partners, both in terms of changing the trajectory of their organizations, but also changing their mindsets a little bit to be able to bring in some of those business perspectives into their everyday operations so they can think about, hey, what's the return on investment for something like this? If we do this project over here, is that going to improve the livelihoods of the community that we serve? And so the impact ends up taking a number of different forms. I mentioned before that this is one of the ways that our alumni stay engaged as well. So each team works with an alumni advisor or two as well. They serve as mentors for the students as they come through. And it really helps to kind of round out the student experience, both in terms of learning from somebody that's been there before, engaging with somebody that's currently in industry that can bring in some of their insight and knowledge as well, and then frankly just problem solving together, because these are big thorny issues that don't have an answer. So we're going and working in the field directly, trying to solve something and see if we can come up with a solution to questions that nobody has answered yet.
I love this program. I think it allows for some collaboration and kind of out of the box kind of insights and thinking about solutions, and also allows for a level of cultural humility to be experienced in many ways, especially for those students who have not had access or had opportunity to work in different areas globally, or even thinking about some of those complex issues. And I think this is a hallmark program, along with some of our other experiential learning, that really align incredibly well with our mission of service leadership, inclusive leadership. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we don't have much time now. So I want to close by maybe just like a couple of questions here. What would you say you're most proud of when it comes to the graduates of this program?
I think one of the things that always stands out to me about folks as they leave the program is, again, their engagement with each other, the connectedness that they build in their time in the program. Every MBA program out there is going to create graduates that have core business skills as they go into the world. But I think really seeing the connections that people build over the time in the program and the way that they continue to engage with each other, the way that they continue to engage with us as well, I think really reflects that there's something a little bit different about this experience as they go through the program.
Yeah, I really like the phrase you used earlier around people who decide to make Mendoza their MBA home. They wish to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's something that is inherent to the community here, I think to the university. So thank you so much for that. I guess as a final wrap up, is there any advice that you would offer somebody who's, in consideration phase, thinking about whether or not they should do an MBA, and where maybe they might want to do an MBA? What's a top piece of advice you would offer?
Yeah, so I think a couple elements here, actually. So I would really think about it as an investment in yourself. I'm sure a lot of people who are considering an MBA, maybe have a couple years of work experience already. But this is really at its core, it's both a skill set and it's a network, right? And so you're gaining a new mindset, you're gaining a new skill set to be able to build your career on. And then you're gaining a network for life. So those are some really incredible and really powerful things that will help to serve you and your career and your communities for a long, long time after you leave this place. So think about that in the context of, where your career could potentially go in the long term. Think also about the type of experience that you want to have and what you want to get out of it and where you want to go next. This is a program, that creates a lot of opportunities. There's some really incredible experiences to, engage with different entities here on campus, also to travel internationally, to study in places like Silicon Valley as well. So think about the type of experience that you want to have over the program, and then also think about where you want it to take you after, having a good sense of kind of what comes next. Part of the process is a process of discernment as you come through, but, at the end of the day, we do really well in a couple core areas. And so, if you're looking at something like consulting, finance, marketing, or technology, those are things that we're going to be able to support and deliver very well for. And so think about kind of how that fits into your goals, your progression, and, where you'd like to be able to see yourself going after the MBA program.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to sit with you, to hear from you about this program and about, it's clear that you're passionate about what you do and the connection that you have here with Mendoza and the University of Notre Dame. And I know that is such an infectious magnetism when it comes to student engagement and being a good steward of the program in your leadership role. So thank you so much. I am definitely taking away that the program and the curriculum itself with the innovations are creating more flexibility, more options, more tailored, student-centered approach. Our career development is also very personalized to candidates. And then there are tremendous opportunities for students to really have a unique MBA experience overall. Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for being here, and we look forward to sharing more with you along the path. Please do reach out to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.